everybody to RM Sotheby's Car Show, the all-new podcast where we're going to be tackling all sorts of automotive topics, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to be very hard to conceal the fact that if you watched the previous episode, we are in fact in the same location, but why not? Because it's beautiful. We are bringing you this episode from the Salon Privè London event in the amazing grounds of the Royal Hospital in Chelsea. And it's a beautiful day, and we thought, well, if we've got this amazing location, why not do 2 episodes and make the most of it? So that's exactly what we're doing. I am joined once again by my esteemed colleagues Will Smith, car specialist at RM Sotheby's, and Duccio Lopresto, our business development director.
Hello, everybody.
And we're sitting directly in the sun. It's rather warm, isn't it, gents?
It is, but I'm not complaining.
It's fantastic. I feel like I'm in Italy.
Yeah, which is not something you often say, is it?
No,
not in London.
Not at all. Not in London.
And we've got a bottle of water. I could reveal the fact that Will Smith also has a beer under the table. He's hiding it from the viewers, but you know, I'm just going to get it out there. I'm just going to get it out there. And on this episode, we're going to be talking to our special guest, which is Justin Lunny. He is the CEO and founder of Everrati, which is a company that might be known to you because they are one of the very high-end specialists in electrifying classic cars. So he's got quite a lot of interesting things to say about a new area of the market that we'd like to explore a little bit more. Let's just talk a little bit about the market, because we've had 3 auctions. We've had 2 in North America, in Arizona and Amelia. Yeah. And we've had 1 in Paris, and they've gone pretty well, haven't they? And we're also in the immediate build-up to our Monaco sale, which is only a few weeks away. Yeah. So what do we think then? What's the word on the street?
It's surprised everyone. I don't know if you agree, Duccio. I think everyone's been surprised by how quickly out of the traps the market has reacted, and in a positive way. And you know, all of the auctions in North America and Europe, Paris was a great success. Amelia, Arizona, incredible numbers that we saw coming out of these. Numbers that we haven't seen for pre-COVID, you know, since pre-COVID times. And I think everyone's been surprised at how the market has reacted in this time where things are opening up. People are sort of starting to go to events again, starting to go to auctions again. And I suspect, my 2 pence worth, is that people have had a lot of time to sit around and think about what they want to sell, what they want to buy, what they want to do with their collections.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we're seeing 2022 being the kind of fruits of that time, that reflection.
Well, a couple of people have said to me, you know, that during COVID, there was a couple of years where it was actually quite hard to spend money. I mean, it wasn't impossible, was it? But, you know, a lot of people have they've actually saved a bit of money. Some people have come out of COVID having, you know, spent less money perhaps than they might typically have done. Absolutely. And they've got a little bit to spend, and they're going shopping, right? Yeah. So I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's in general a lot of liquidity in the market, and people are now spending money in classic cars in general also as a kind of a safe asset. It's better for them to spend money on physical assets like classic cars, which keep the value instead of like putting the money in the bank or invest them in the stock market. But as you said, Will, we were very surprised by the results in Arizona and Paris, because both the American and European market are like behaving really well. And what strikes me a lot is the fact that both pre-war cars, post-war cars, and modern hypercars, all of them have had great results. If you see like the Duesenbergs we sold in Arizona, they were sold for like almost record prices. Like the Bugatti B110 in Paris, it sold for like almost 3 million.
And the Ferrari, the 288 GTO we sold in Paris, that was a record price as well.
It's record prices, and people say, you know, after COVID, like as you said, people want to spend, people want to get these cars for new experiences, and it's great for us, it's great for the collectors, and in general for the market.
And it's, you know, my relationship with RM goes back to 2007. And when I first started working with RM as a consultant back then, you know, 2008 was the global crash. Yeah. You know, banks were going out of business. Yeah. And of course, what happened in 2008? That was the very beginning of that kind of crazy upward curve in the market, and it's for all of the reasons that you were just mentioning there. Almost anything else, including property, felt risky. Yeah. And it's just an interesting aspect of the collector car market that people don't perceive it as being a risky place to put money. And whilst I don't think any of us around this table want to get back to a situation where speculators are coming back into the market, because that's not a good thing.
No.
I think what time has proven, right, is that although the steepness of the curve varies, it's still a pretty safe place to put money. There's a lot of things going on in the world, so there is a lot of instability right now.
Absolutely.
But the early signs are that doesn't seem to be affecting the car market too much.
No, it doesn't. And I think instability in the wider financial markets always tends to result in people gravitating towards gold, fixed assets like watches, cars, wine, art.
Yeah.
You know, it's bad to say it in some ways, but in times of uncertainty, those asset classes outperform many other investment alternatives. And I think it's like we've seen in 2008 in that situation, and now people feel comfort and security in something physical sitting in their garage.
Absolutely. And in general, I find it very interesting. Like, we are living now in a moment where there is a complete switch in generations. Because if you look at the top collectors worldwide, like the top 100 collectors, the average age is above 70, easily, almost 80.
Yeah.
So in 5 to 10 years, these people unfortunately will not be with us anymore. And the new people are coming into the market, the new generations, through social media as well. Social media, I think, has had a great impact for the collector cars market in general. And these people, like, they come and they're looking for new cars for their garage, to start new collections in general. So it's interesting to see also, like, this kind of perspective, what sort of cars the youngsters are going to buy.
Yeah.
Is it only modern supercars like 80s and 90s hypercars, or maybe they will be interested in pre-war cars as well? Who knows? But we see that there is a rising interest for.
There is, and what has struck me about the market over the last few years is that the market for pre-war cars in North America does still feel very robust, doesn't it? And,
absolutely.
You mentioned, great Duesenbergs, Cadillacs. They're going for very strong money. At auction, we see that less frequently, don't we? In Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a pre-war car guy, really, at my core.
Me too.
But you inherited that from your father, right? And I think that same adage is true of many other collectors who are new to the market, right? They want to follow their own path, but also they are influenced by their father's and their mother's interests.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that inherent niche interest in say pre-war trialing, let's say, you're a trials guy and you like going muddy and like drinking like
real ale
and hip flasks around a trial, right?
Yeah.
That's your upbringing, that's your background, and I think we will still see that, and I think we'll still see pre-war cars being appreciated by our generation and newer generations, because they have been brought up around it. And I think that what's the beauty of our industry is that we can cater to anyone and any interest. So there's so much scope and variety and taste in tastes in our industry.
Yeah, it's a matter of, I think, of having access to the experience. For example, I was very lucky to be able to do the Mille Miglia with my dad in an Alfa 1750 pre-war 6C pre-war car. And that was the most incredible experience I've ever had. Like driving this car, like 1931 engine.
In Italy.
In Italy. Like, it's very rough. There's no electronic, no steering, like power steering, whatever. Like, it's such a different experience, even compared to like a 50s car. So I was able to do the Mille Miglia with a car, so I was able to access it. And after that, I fell in love completely with pre-war cars. Yeah. And if you see what's happening in the private sales market, Alfa 8C or Bugatti 35, they're still like selling for crazy money.
Yeah, London to Brighton market.
London to Brighton is a good example.
Hugely buoyant.
Yeah. Well, I think, the pre-war market is, there are certain touch points in the pre-war market where there are truly great cars, and there's a bit of an analogy with the art market, because contemporary art is where it's at, right? At the moment.
Right.
But that doesn't mean to say that suddenly a Rembrandt or a Caravaggio is valueless.
Yeah.
Clearly, that's never going to happen.
No.
Sure.
You build a collection. You might love contemporary art, but you know, at some point you're going to want an old master, and because they are works of art that transcend generations. I think, you know, a great Alfa pre-war, a great Bentley, a great Bugatti, a Type 35. The market for those cars is never just going to disappear, is it?
Yeah,
never.
True. They're like the Mona Lisas of this world.
Yeah,
they will always be like timeless, you know.
Yeah.
As long as people have the access to the knowledge and the experience.
Yeah, I think it's also really. Sorry, Duccio, I was going to say that what's also really crucial is the people that look after these cars, that maintain these cars. That if as long as they are passing down the knowledge to the next generation as to how to maintain a pre-war car, and look after it, it's not easy. It's labour intensive. But as long as those restorers out there in Europe and America and all over the world are passing down that knowledge as to how to look after those cars, then there's a future for them, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think Duccio's story there about, you know, taking part in the Mille Miglia, I think that's a really important point, because unlike a picture or a piece of furniture, you know, cars they're quite a different asset, if you want to call them that, to have, because they are something that are there to be enjoyed. Yeah. And part of that's not to say that the picture isn't enjoyed, but it's something that you can share communally. A car is something that you can share communally with a lot of other people, and that's where the events. You were talking about vintage sports car club trialing and stuff, you know, in old Austin 7 Chummies. Yeah. I've done a bit of that. It is amazing. Yeah. And if you can get people to do that just once, they'll want to do it again, and then they're going to want to go out and buy an Austin 7 Chummy for £15,000 just so they can go and do that. And I think we've seen at Goodwood the way the Duke of Richmond has developed that event into something which is very much not just about the cars. It's about going and dressing up and getting into the
lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle.
It is, and what you're finding is that people that previously had absolutely no interest in cars at all, they want to go to those events because they want, a bit like actually, people want to go to Henley to watch the rowing, even if they have absolutely no interest in rowing at all. And but you know, Goodwood and other events around the world have managed to kind of do that, and that's really important because it feeds the market.
Very much
absolutely.
So.
I mean, the market lives because of the events, which are an incredible part of this market.
But that wasn't that way when we were kids and we first met. You know, 15 years ago, whatever it was. Yeah. That wasn't really there were events, and but there was more enthusiasts.
You're right. There were more niche. There were not as many. But I think Goodwood is a great example, Peter, because Goodwood is completely inclusive. Anybody could come and pay. I don't remember what's the normal ticket price. Probably £20.
It's not crazy.
£30. You can just pay that, and you can see like the Ferrari GTOs, the McLaren F1, and all the best cars in the world there racing. You can touch them if you're allowed to. But that's the great thing about Goodwood.
But the secret is, if you buy a classic car, you get better parking. That's the thing.
Best car park in the world.
People say, right, I'm going to buy a Morris Minor just because I can get into the priority parking area.
For sure.
So good tip there for listeners.
Yeah.
And actually, that's quite a serious point, because it's very easy. I think particularly for us, you know, within RM Sotheby's and the reputation we have in the marketplace, it's very easy to lapse into a kind of a way of talking flippantly about Type 35 Bugattis or 250 GTOs. Yeah. Obviously that isn't what the market isn't underpinned by cars like that. It's underpinned by people that want to buy an MG Midget or a Morris Minor, or something very modest.
When you think about it, you know, in terms of value and volume, you know, I would think 95% of classic car owners, you know, have cars that are worth under £20,000.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know,
that's for sure.
And so that's the core root of the grassroots of this industry. And I think, you know, events like Goodwood, I know Goodwood doesn't need any more promotion than it already has, but those sorts of events in the last 10 years have done a great deal to bring our industry to the mainstream. You know, look at the car manufacturers here today. Presenting their cars to the market for the first time. That wouldn't have happened 10 years ago in a classic car event. It just would not have happened.
No. They would just go to Geneva or like Frankfurt Motor Show.
Exactly.
Another great example is the ICE in St. Moritz. Yeah. Like that event, like it's completely inclusive. It's open. You can just come to the lake and see all these crazy cars like GTOs and Alpha 8Cs running on the lake. And it's just timeless.
And all the manufacturers are there, right?
And Ferrari is there, Porsche is there, and like all the big manufacturers, because they feel like now that's the place to be, where the great collectors are, but also the main public at the same time. So it's the perfect spot for them.
Myself and Will and Duccio, we've had a quick scan around the event. Well, more than a quick scan around the event. We've had a good look around the event, and on the far side of the launch from where we're sitting right now is an exhibitor, Everrati. Which may well be known to some of you, a lot of you I would think, because the company's had quite a lot of visibility over the last year or so, and they specialise in electrifying classic cars, and that's a topic that in a previous conversation we touched upon a little bit, and we're joined here by the founder and CEO of Everrati, Justin Lunny. Thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.
And we just thought we'd have a bit of a chinwag about this whole world of the electrification of classic cars, because we all know about the stuff that you can go and buy in a new showroom from all of the volume manufacturers, but clearly what you're doing is something quite different from that. It's niche, it's low volume, but I understand it's been going pretty well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here. That's right. I mean, I think the reality is that our clients are people who are probably forward-thinking. They've got into EV in a certain way, and I think the stats show themselves really that 90+% of people who've ever driven an EV would never go back to combustion engine. So if you start to look at the stats, you start to look at these beautiful cars that we see around us, if that's the reality, and we are seeing that in a lot of places, then the only way to really truly give these cars a future is to do the kinds of things that we're doing.
Yeah, interesting, because we would talking about this very topic, and you know, the whole question of what does the future look like for internal combustion engined classic cars.
That's right.
We all know that they're going to disappear from showrooms, but you know, if you own a car from the 50s, 60s, 70s, whenever, you know, how are you going to be able to use it, enjoy it?
Right.
And I guess without a crystal ball, none of us know. I mean, one thing that intrigues me as an outsider looking in, I mean, have you experienced any fallout or negativity about taking a Porsche 964 or a Pagoda Mercedes and you know, doing what you do to them?
You'll always have the odd comment, but the reality is, I would say it's less than 4 or 5% of individuals that we sort of come across. So our philosophy is very much that the car is the most important thing, the structure of the car, the way it looks, the way it drives, the way it handles, and we are really redefining these cars as an EV rather than just converting them. And the difference really is that we're not just shoving any old motor in and battery set and trying to make it work. You know, our engineers are ex-McLaren, ex-Lotus, ex-JLR, people who have kind of really defined some of the new EVs that you're starting to see on the road, and therefore, in the same way as you might buy a country Pal and give it new heating or AV or air conditioning, we're giving these vehicles a new heart. But of course, everything you also do is reversible. So if you have your matching numbers, for argument's sake, Pagoda, you can still have the motor with it and sell it with it if you choose to sell it. The other thing, I suppose, is that in reality, we're opening these cars to a brand new audience as well. You know, so we are getting people in their 30s, even late 20s, are now saying, I love the look of a Pagoda, I love the look of a 911, but I just can't justify buying and driving them as a combustion engine car. And then lastly, on your point around the 964, yeah, we can kind of create a beautifully resolved EV out of, let's say, an unloved C4 tip. That actually isn't your kind of...
And there's no shortage of them, right?
No shortage of those.
There's plenty of them.
There's no shortage of those,
absolutely right. Yeah, no,
Justin,
I get that.
Sorry, we were just talking off camera about, you know, which cars are being, are kind of suitable for your business, but what I've discovered from selling them over the last 15 years or so is there are some cars that are actually quite well suited to electrification because they're underpowered, quite heavy. I'm thinking sort of 50s, 60s, Rolls-Royce era. Quite complicated mechanically, complicated to maintain. And also, I've sold cars in the past that might not have an engine, right? And they're sold as a chassis, on its own.
Project.
And so, I would think those sorts of cars, and I think in our world there are lots of them.
There are.
Sitting there without engines, without real provenance or matching numbers or anything like that, that are projects that are sitting there unloved in garages. that are crying out for people like you to come and breathe new life into them.
Yeah, and or they already have the wrong engine. You know, you've got Pagodas with V8 that really shouldn't be there. So the reality is that this has been done before. It's just been done in a different way, and I completely agree with you. So that, you know, if you look at the kinds of vehicles we're doing, generally speaking, there's a lot of them. So we're not taking, you know, the sort of pinnacle of Ferrari or the pinnacle of even Mercedes-Benz. We're taking cars that were made probably in their thousands, certainly, and have a new life. You know, they have an appeal. You know, our first US client is a Bay Area, happens to be a tech billionaire, or certainly made a lot of money selling his business in that area. His story is that he used to sit in the back of his father's 964 when he was a child, always promised himself one, but his comment to us is he would never have bought it unless it was electric.
Right.
Okay.
Entirely the opposite for, you know, what we would expect generally, and that's what we're seeing quite a lot of now.
Yeah. I have a question about your demographics. So you just said that this tech billionaire bought the car, but in general, what's the type of demographics? What's your typical buyer persona for this type of cars?
I'd say we've been very surprised actually. We kind of looked at, originally we had quite a lot of interest from collectors who say, well, I've got 3 of these, and actually why don't I have my 4th one being electric? And that's great, and there are some individuals, as we know, around the world that have big collections. But increasingly we're finding, as I say, it's people with sort of a tech background. We have a lady in London who has kids at a school. She's in North London. She, the school actually in the Camden district, you can't drive to the school within, I think, 3 streets of the school unless you're in an EV.
Okay.
Funny old thing, everyone's in their i3s and their whatever else it is. She's in a really cool series Land Rover.
Yeah.
So why not? You know, so I would say it's quite a mixture actually, and surprisingly so.
I mean, if I was restoring a Series 1 Land Rover, for example, right? I mean, you've got a Land Rover, Peter, right?
A beautiful one.
Literally the slowest vehicle on the planet.
I mean, I had a Series 1.
After my Panda.
I had a Series 1, and it literally, you know, 50 miles an hour was maxed out, revving its absolute nuts off. And, you know, a car like that, all right, let's just say, take the example of the car that's found in a barn that is perfectly original, perfect, everything's right on it. That's not the car to convert to an EV, right? But there are plenty of Land Rovers languishing in fields, right, without engines or with wrong engines in them and so on and so forth, as we touched on before. But, you know, I think those cars really do suit it. And I think that the market now, as you see it in London, and that example you gave of that lady driving her kids to school in a Land Rover, I just think people love the look of a classic car, but they're terrified by the mechanical element.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll be honest, if you go over to our stand at the moment, you'll see a beautiful sort of sage green Series 2A. That honestly had plants going out of it when we bought it. You know, it was going nowhere as a vehicle, and we've saved it and given it hopefully a new life for, you know, many years to come. So I think that also is really important, and I think that, look, again, we're not doing it to the Holy Grail cars. That said, look, if somebody brought us a car and we take our philosophy in exactly the same way in every vehicle, which is the car is the star, the car is the fabric. The car, in the same way as you don't go knocking walls down in a Georgian mansion, your car and the structure is the most important thing, and really we're just sympathetically upgrading and updating it.
Yeah. I have a question regarding the engineering process of the car. How difficult is it to take like a non-electric chassis and transform it into an electric car? What about like the braking system, for example? Now that the car is much faster, what about the chassis? Like,
so I guess in keeping with the methodology, really, we're not looking to make these hugely faster unless they can take it. Yeah. So the Porsche, yes, is much quicker because Porsche have, you know, huge. There's a huge history of upgrading them and upgrading braking systems and suspension systems. If you look at our Series Land Rover, it's still 13 seconds to 60. You know, and actually you probably don't want to do much more than 60. You really don't.
Good to say.
But
it could be quite dangerous.
That's right. But in terms of the engineering, so we have a team, as I say, who are primarily ex-OEM engineers. We will take a vehicle. Let's take the Series Land Rover. We will take an original car. We will weigh it all 4 corners. We'll look at its structure. We'll look at where we can sort of fit our bits. We 3D scan the entire vehicle once the powertrain has been taken out, and then we CAD design a brand new solution for that car. We install it, we test it. So every car that we're doing at the moment, or every model we're doing at the moment, takes about a year's worth of development, quite a few thousand hours, but what that means is that that's been engineered to OEM quality such that we can then effectively create many more of them, and that's really our business model.
And I think that's the point I was going to make, is your Everrati is not in the business of you don't want me turning up with a ropey old Triumph TR4 and saying, can you electrify it for me? Your business model is that you are selling fully, from the ground up engineered
That's exactly right.
products as any OEM would do.
That's exactly right.
And so you're not a converter, you are a manufacturer.
And it's a fine line. So the vehicle itself is always the customer's first. So the Series 2, if they brought it to us or we find it, but essentially it's their vehicle. Right. And that's quite important from an IP perspective and everything else. But everything else from there is pre-engineered and predefined for that vehicle. So, everything we're doing on a Series 2 is entirely different, as you might imagine, to our GT40, and it's different batteries, different motors, different power electronics. So, but you're absolutely right. The end result is a product that we can stand on, we can support, we can serve. Although EVs don't need much servicing, it's mainly the oily bits that are left that need the attention. That's our model.
Quick question, Justin, on promotion of electric vehicles, and it's a subject that I first heard about maybe 3 years ago when I went to a conference in Monaco. Company looking to start a race series, and I know that a couple of race series are starting up.
That's right.
Have Everrati got any plans to sort of sponsor or get involved with any race series of just electric racing cars?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we haven't put anything out there yet, but you can imagine the engineering that's gone into our GT40 would be perfect for that environment. Yeah. So to give you some stats, that powertrain is twin 400 horsepower, 400 newton meters of torque motors, so 800 horsepower in a package that is very compact. It has 60 kilowatt hours of very, very high energy batteries, so very quick to discharge and recharge. And it's been built essentially to do that kind of job. Sure. So, for example, with the Porsche Taycan, you'll be familiar with, that's an 800 volt architecture. Our GT40 is 700 volt, so it's probably the most advanced technologies in a retro electric vehicle. And of course that does then mean we could we could track it, we could do things, I don't know, maybe around Formula E or something like that.
Traditionally, like obviously in the combustion engine technology, racing has always been the test bed for companies to show their prowess of what they can do.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to think in the EV world that would be similar.
Definitely, and we're looking and we're talking to people about that very subject at the moment. I don't think we're there yet, but wouldn't it be great to have almost a version of Goodwood but fully EV, and actually cars. Being able to do that would be great. And cars that people love. The reality is we're doing this to cars that people absolutely adore, and that we're fortunate, right? We're doing with things that people already love, but actually they love them for a reason, and actually why not be able to see them continue to race? We can even race on days that are supposed to be quiet days, obviously, on racetracks as well. So we're not limited by noise restrictions either.
Yeah.
And a quick question, because one of the most emotive things about particularly classic cars is the noise. How do you guys deal with that?
Yeah, we have a philosophy that we try to first of all keep the balance of the cars. So again, the sort of emotion around the driving experience is similar, not the same, and we also have the ability to add back in sound. Now it's kind of an interesting one. We on our 911 we have sound generation systems that are actually the same as used in a brand new, let's say, diesel with a sport button. It's the same kind of technology. It also reverberates through the chassis, so when you switch it on, the car is vibrating as you'd expect. Now, honestly, I drive it like that 20% of the time. The rest I just switch it off because it's kind of not needed. But it's a bit of fun, and actually, if you want that re-engagement, you want some of that experience. I think it's quite a nice touch, but it's not necessary.
No.
Our GT40, we're probably going one level further than that. We're also looking at things like virtual gear change technologies, where we're looking to potentially map the EV powertrain to, let's say, a V8 and be able to change gears in inverted commas. So again, trying to bring that engagement back into something that has been designed, let's be honest, as an on-off switch essentially, but retain the character.
And I've got another question, because RM Sotheby's, we're an auction house, so we spend a lot of time talking to people not necessarily purely in the context of investment, you know, because nobody has a crystal ball, and I think it's fair to say that we are trying to promote cars as a hobby rather than as a pure investment. But you can't get around the fact that a lot of people do get into cars because it feels like a relatively safe place to have their money tied up. The EVs are quite an interesting area, aren't they? Because there's not a lot of track record and history to talk about, to kind of analyse where values go in the future. So, I mean, what's your take on that?
So I think there's a couple of ways of answering that. So I think the first is to build the best quality we absolutely can. So one example of that is we've just signed an agreement with Aria in the United States to build our Porsches. They built, as you may know, quite a lot of, around 130 of Singer Porsches. So in terms of build quality and sort of fit and finish, the best quality always shines through. The second thing, however, is we also offer the ability to, as we've said before, retain not only the engine but also the other elements, and everything we do is reversible. So, for example, you know, as I said before, if you've got the original powertrain, it's still matching numbers. The engine just happens to be in your, you know, your shed, your office, or if your wife let you in the kitchen. But the point is, it's there, it's on display, and if you choose to sell the vehicle, it can go along with it.
No,
so
fair.
It's still, again, matching numbers. But as I say, I often use the analogy of a beautiful property where people are upgrading that all the time. If it's listed, clearly you can't do things that you might do with modern properties. And ours is the same, you know, keeping the structure, keeping the essence, keeping the character and the body style without ruining it. It's still a beautiful Porsche, an amazing Land Rover, an amazing Pagoda, let's say. It just happens to have a new heart and can be used now in more places than
absolutely. And I suppose it's also fair to say that so long as Everrati is a niche business with low volume production capabilities. I mean, you know, one of the things with Singer is that when one does come onto the used market, it's a shortcut to actually getting your hands on a Singer, because I don't know what the waiting list for a Singer is, but you got
2 years.
You got to wait a long time.
It's crazy.
And you know, you're likely to going to be in a similar situation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And I think, you know, Singers are really interesting. Everybody, clearly they created really, or certainly resolved the sort of resto mod market. You know, if I'm very honest, we are so fortunate. We're already being mentioned in the same breath, you know, so people who may have a roof, they may have a Singer, they may have a Gunter Works, they now want an Everrati, which we're very, very fortunate about. And as you rightly say, that means that one would imagine there will be a demand, because we won't be making, you know, hundreds of these, as you can imagine.
I have a quick question about your price position, like in this landscape of like electric manufacturers. How do you position your brand?
So look, so everything we do is a full nut and bolt restored vehicle. So almost take away the drivetrain. That has clearly a value and a cost element to it. And clearly then, you know, the architecture that we put in there is expensive and has many thousands of hours of development to actually put it out there. So our cars start, or our work, and I say cars because the finished product's the car, our work starts at around 150,000 plus tax for, let's say, the Series Land Rover, right up to 400 plus on the GT40. So it's kind of quite a spread. But interestingly, you know, we've had people come to us and say, would you do my X? And these are people that actually, the money isn't the issue, it's they want the first EV or whatever it might be.
Oh, yeah.
And that's quite exciting as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then they're buying into our engineering expertise. And of course, we could potentially then make more of them, but they want the first of something, which is kind of exciting as well.
How many miles can you do with a single charge?
Again, that varies. So something like a Land Rover, I would say up to about 150 miles. But given, if you've driven a Series Land Rover, you probably don't want to do more than 30 or 40 without a chiropractor with you. Right through to something like the Porsche, up to 200. But honestly, I get near a 170 because I'm enjoying it too much. I mean, that's the reality. Is these are fun cars. We put fast charging on everything we do.
Okay,
so,
that's great.
You know, so that's really important. So let's say you want to stop for half an hour, you can probably put another 50-60% charge back in it at a fast charger. So it makes it very, very usable. And of course, turning up at an EV charger in a 1971 Land Rover, you get some looks as well. So it's quite a lot of fun.
You get a sticker on your windscreen saying, "Why have you parked this old bus in?"
Exactly. But the thing is, like, the thing that I like a lot is the fact that, you know, many people criticize electric cars, modern electric cars, because of their looks.
Absolutely.
They complain about the look. It's emotionless. It's not nice. What you're doing is you're taking iconic cars of the past and putting now like modern technology, which makes it's a kind of a nice mix to it.
Exactly. And you know, the reality is that if we were, I suppose, we've chosen cars, and we've been fortunate in the ones we've chosen so far. And the great thing is we're now getting feedback from customers, what they'd like us to do next, and that's a wonderful place to be, as you can imagine.
Yeah,
I think it's brilliant, and I do honestly. It's an area of the market where it needs people to be doing it, and it needs people to be doing it to a very high standard.
Yes.
So I think it's fantastic what you're doing, and I think the cars look great. I mean, because I've got an old series Land Rover, I was having a look at yours, and it's the workmanship is amazing. So we wish you all the best, and we hope you have a good show here.
Thank you.
And you only need to sell one to make it all worthwhile, don't you?
It's a pleasure to be here. The weather's absolutely outstanding, and meeting great car girls and boys is also a pleasure. So thank you.
Cheers.
You're welcome. Thanks, Justin. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks everyone for joining us on another episode of RM Sotheby's Car Show. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed it. I hope it's been a thrilling experience for you. And please do join us for our next one. And I would like to thank Justin Lunny for being our guest, for Will, to Duccio, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.